Thanks for staying with us here on TVC Breakfast. Now, the federal government says it will commence another round of consultation with critical stakeholders across the country and all sectors to reach a consensus on the new national minimum wage. This decision was reached after President Tinubu approved that the memo for the deliberation submitted by the tripartite committee is stepped down during the FEC meeting. There is more in this report.
This Federal Executive Council meeting was highly anticipated, and it lived up to expectations, but dashed the hopes of many workers waiting for a final resolution and the start of the process to implement a new national minimum wage. The report of the tripartite committee came up for deliberation, but President Bola Tinubu had to step it down and decided to engage in wider consultations with other crucial stakeholders and wage-paying entities.
Consult further, especially with the state governors and the organized private sector, before he makes a presentation to the National Assembly, before an executive bill is presented to the National Assembly.
The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy announced that Nigeria's economy is getting back on its feet. He says, unlike the previous administration, President Bola Tinubu's government does not rely on the central bank's ways and means to fund capital projects.
The total debt stock of Nigeria in US dollar terms fell by 15%. That is very positive.
President Tinubu's Federal Cabinet meeting also discussed ongoing efforts to flatten the curve of cholera infections and slow down the death rate across the country through a multi-sectoral approach.
Resources were deployed to 21 states to help them respond to the cholera, in addition to improving awareness of our population.
For the Nigeria Drug Law Enforcement Agency, approval was granted for the procurement of CNG-compliant vehicles, weapons, body scanners, and anti-riot gear for counter-narcotics operations. The Ministry of Works also got approval for the review of contracts for the construction of 3 infrastructure projects. The Federal Executive Council approved a memo from the Ministry of the Environment to ban single-use plastics across all federal government ministries, departments and agencies, in line with the 2022 National Policy on Plastic Waste Management. President Bola Tinubu may have cleverly avoided another nationwide shutdown with his decision to consult widely before adopting a new national minimum wage. But it's still unclear how long Nigerian workers will have to wait before this matter is resolved and a new minimum wage will be fully implemented. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
Now, several issues mentioned in that report, and then 2 things we'll be discussing on the program this morning. But first, we'll be talking about the first one, which we have our guest joining us from the Abuja studio, is the MD CEO, Exitom Consulting Limited, and HR expert, labor advisor, Adeyemi Ajayi. Thank you so much for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you. So let me get your initial reaction to the Federal Executive Council decision to step down the memorandum on the new national minimum wage. What effect or implications do you think this would definitely have for workers and the Nigerian economy?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad decision by the President and the FEC in particular. The reason is, in a case like this, when there are negotiations and there are terms on the table, this time around we're having multi-party discussion concerning the minimum wage. And I strongly believe that the President's intention to consult widely is in the interest of other stakeholders, so that, the federal government doesn't reach a point where they agree the minimum wage with the labor, or the organized labor, and it turns that other stakeholders are not even happy about it. And what it leads to, it's, a lot of negative reactions from other stakeholders. So it's okay, it's even okay that the labor should understand that dimension of negotiation. because in negotiation you have the worst alternative to negotiated agreement, which is what now you also have the best alternative to negotiated agreements. So at some point there will be a meeting point where all stakeholders should agree. A win-win is what I believe the president is looking for. Thank you.
And so many factors have come up amidst these discussions, like sustainability, viability, and also productivity of stakeholders, the local governments, the private sector, and also states to pay whatever is agreed. But talk to us about the factors that may have been considered in ensuring that this figure is reached. And, speak to the facts about some persons that say the federal government is also using this opportunity to buy time.
Yeah, well, let me quickly take the last one. I don't think the federal government is using this to buy time. I believe they are being very reasonable. You mentioned something around affordability. There are certain factors that we must put into consideration when we are looking at the minimum wage. Is affordability and sustainability. These are very critical factors. If you afford it now, can you sustain it going forward? I think that is part of what the FEC, the president in particular, is saying, that let us consult widely, let us check our numbers, let us be very sure that if the federal government can afford it, can the state governors afford it, or the state government? Can the local government afford it? Can organized private sector afford this? So I believe that the case of affordability and sustainability is what is being considered utmost. Otherwise, if the decision is taken without this, it may backfire. It may lead to a situation where the minimum wage becomes difficult for the state governors or the state government, as the case may be, the local government and organized private sector to be able to pay. And I don't think it's buying time. However, I think the federal government should state a time for their consultation so that it doesn't seem as if it's left, open like that. I think there should be a time where they should come together, and the time should not be too far into the future. Thank you.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because those who are arguing that that's probably a delay tactic. But the Nigerian Labour Congress has actually insisted on 250,000 naira, while the federal government and the state government is saying that they don't want to go beyond 62,000 naira. But the question I would like to ask you is, what do you think would be a fair and realistic minimum wage, considering the current economic situation?
The fair, considering the current one, looking at the states, in some quarters I was mentioning between 200 and 250. But if you consider the case of affordability and sustainability, I think 100,000 would not be bad, sincerely. It will not be bad. Because, you see, when you sit with labor on 250,000, the inflationary reaction will be more terrible on the nation, and it will make the country to even lose more, in terms of inflationary push, on so many prices of items. So reasonably looking at, affordability, sustainability, as well as inflationary reaction, I think reasonably 100,000 will not be bad. It will not be bad.
Sorry about that. So you're saying 100,000, but the organized private sector is also, saying that 62,000 naira will be something that is fair. I'm not sure whether you would agree, because it is one thing, just like you said, it's one thing for you to propose an amount of money, it's another thing for you to have the capacity or capability to pay the workers, because we have them in the millions. So if you're saying 100,000, against what backdrop? How do you break it down, considering the economic reality?
No, I didn't get the last part, please.
Yeah, so I'm saying that you're saying 100,000 naira would be fair. What parameters did you actually consider for you to arrive at that figure? Okay,
you need to look at affordability, sincerely. Let's look at internally generated revenue for the state governments. Let's start from there, from the local governments. How many local governments will be able to afford that? Let's be very sincere. Knowing fully well that the cost of governance is also increasing. cost of operation, cost of managing offices, even cost of capital project is going on. So these are parameters we need to look into. Another parameter we need to look into is the inflationary reaction. If we push from where we are to 250, I want to tell you the inflationary reaction, by my own assessment, will go up by about 50%. And that will not be too good for the nation. The third factor we should look into is the government revenue. Check out the government revenue in the last 1 year and match it with what they want to pay going forward. So these are factors that should be considered. These are parameters that made me to think that 100,000 should not be bad. Government should be able to afford 100,000. Look at the revenue flow. The state government, the local government, the organized private sector, yes, they have other places they're spending money, but 100,000 would not be bad at this point.
And that 100,000 naira figure you place it on, let's compare it with what Labour's template is. A family of 6, 4 children, and a mother and a father. 100,000 naira, looking at the inflation that we are facing currently. How will that work?
Yeah, if we have to look at it that way, this is also time for people to know that we need to work on thin budgets. We can't get it laboriously or elaborately as the case may be. 100,000, I'll say, is manageable, in quotes, for families. It's not something that I strongly believe that it's sustainable for families, but manageable. Let us know these two factors. Manageable in the sense that, through this thick and thin period, it's also for families, for individuals to think of other means of survival, like cutting down personal budget, which I think everybody is already doing.
Mm. And when you talk about manageable, some will say that this brings about the discussion of the cost of governance. Since we're all managing, we might as well also extend it to, governance. But let's talk about the viability of a state to, pay what is agreed. If you look at the IGR, the internally generated revenue of some states are even larger than some countries and have not been able to, put to use some of the resources that they have. Should these states in the first place exist?
No, I didn't get the last part, please.
What I'm trying to say is that since we are looking at factors such as the viability and the sustainability of state to pay, and of course, you know that there are some states that have not been able to, afford the current minimum wage, and that's forming part of the conversations. But we're also talking about the productivity of workers in each state and how the state governors have been able to manage them in relation to the internally generated revenue of each state. We have some states that have been able to, produce and procure wealth without having to rely on allocations.
Yeah, I think we should have a national template for IGR, across the states. One thing that should be very clear is that some states will be able to afford this 100,000 we're talking about, some will not be able to afford it. Now, it behoves on each state to look inward. There is no state in Nigeria, and I repeat, there is no state in Nigeria that does not have potential to generate money. Even Northeast, Northwest, everywhere. It's just that most times we focus more on FEC. The state government focus more on FEC rather than, developing the state to generate more revenue. So this is a time for every tier of government to drive, especially the state and the local government, to come together, work together, and generate more revenue. There are lots of potentials. There are a lot of commodities that Nigeria can rely on across the 6 geopolitical zone that can generate large revenue for them. But unfortunately, there is no focus on this. So I think states should focus on revenue generation this time around.
Absolutely, but when we've been talking about the same thing over and over, again, all through the decades, and then it's saying that advising states to look inward and look towards generating more revenues internally. But does this speak to the followers, or let's say the electorate, in deciding who has not someone who has the gift of the gab during electioneering, but being able to just juxtapose what they say vis-a-vis what they do? Because if the electorate are not exactly doing their own due diligence before electing anyone into the office, do you not feel that we are taking it back to the electorate who will bring someone into the office and then now goes back to be fighting the same person because the person is not delivering on the dividends of the, good governance vis-a-vis this minimum wage we are talking about?
Okay, thank you for that. You see, one of the things we lack in this part of the world is accountability. And we have seasonal electorates. These are electorates that only enjoy pre-elections. After election, they suffer. I'm very sorry to use that word. They don't hold people accountable to what they want to, to achieve for them. We have short memories. People come, they give us a lot of promises, a lot of things, but we don't hold them accountable, asking them to achieve all these mandates. We don't even track. Even themselves, they even forget some of those things, and life becomes normal. We have people that just want to occupy position, and we have electorate that, we have tribal, religious, and ethnic sentiments. There should be a standard where we need to assess people on the potential of building their immediate economy. But unfortunately, if we bring it to the electorate, I'm very sorry to say, we have electorates who are even afraid to hold people accountable for what they have said. So for us, it's a long journey on that part, sincerely. That is my opinion.
And according to what the FEC said, this was stepped down to ensure a wider consultation between the president, state governors, private sector, and also local government. And that's where I'm bringing my question from. Amidst the calls for local government autonomy, how will these consultations, impact on quality of service delivery in the local governments?
Well, the local government, I'll say, the impact on quality of service in the local government is that the local government should improve on the quality of services they deliver. There are certain benefits that go to local government, but what is the local government giving back to the people, in the environment where they are, at the grassroots level, and I sincerely think, again, one of the impact this should have on the local government is to set up structures of having what we call grassroots economy. Grassroots economy is the economy that looks at the potential within the local government and harness resources together to build these capabilities, so that even within the local government can generate, revenue for itself by building its local economy. So for me, the quality of service for local government should increase, and it should be better. But again, coming back to the issue of accountability, who holds the local government accountable? If you go to so many local governments, I'm sorry to say, apart from states like Lagos State or maybe Rivers State, if you go to some local government, barely will you see people there. They only come there on salary days and everybody goes away. What do they really deliver to their people? I think we should start questioning that.
And for every time the NLC comes out to say they want better conditions of work, they want some more benefits from the federal government, more attention is placed on the central. What is the place of the NLC in, looking at the subnationals in improving the conditions of work?
I think there should be more stakeholder engagement, even by labor, by NLC, at the subnational level. I think this is my perception. I may be wrong. NLC is stronger at the center, At the subnational level, the push is not really that strong. I think NLC should empower its people to even engage in state negotiation, discussing some of these things. Most things are usually pushed to the center. Let the representatives of NLC at various states, at various tiers, at various levels, engage continuously with the government. Having a fair and good workplace, it's not only at the central, but unfortunately, I think that NLC needs more engagement at the grassroots level, at the state level, at the local government level, to infuse better ideology of better workplace. Some of the decisions taken centrally rather affect the states and the local government, even more than the central. So I believe NLC should, start focusing more on states and local government engagement, stakeholder engagement, which I believe will yield better results.
Right. Taking this beyond what the NLC, the federal government, organized private sector, are talking about, in terms of haggling for the exact amount for the minimum wage. It goes beyond that to the ordinary man on the street, because there are some people who are actually waiting for the minimum wage to go up, so much so that they are ready to inflate the prices of their goods and services. So exactly, and then the landlord is also, waiting for, all of these things to materialize, and then they begin to inflate their prices and all of that. So what is the role of the common man here and the bystanders who are watching that, okay, we'll see what they come out with, and then we'll do what we want to do? What is the role of the bystanders here who are observing? How do you address this?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, we have a wrong national psyche. Increase in minimum wage should not trigger people like the landlord to come and say, okay, because you are earning more, you should pay more. What is the correlation? I'm staying in 3-bedroom, I am paying you X amount, and because you learned that my minimum wage has increased, I should come and pay you more. I think we have this national psyche of taking advantage of situations, which I think we should address. The way I think that should be addressed is to ensure that there are standardization for prices and transactions, standards. Even between individuals. When the common man, I quite agree with you that by the time this minimum wage goes up, there will be inflationary reactions. I agree with you. But we should come to the fact that what is the correlation? What is the correlation? Is it cost push for those that are increasing the prices? Or in what way would they come up and say, okay, I'm going to increase price because there is increase in minimum wage? They want to say that, yes, because there's increase in minimum wage, we also are going to increase wages for our staff. Well, that is okay. But, directly linking it to minimum wage, I think it's a wrong psyche for us.
The argument
and my message to everyone who is doing that is to try as much as possible. Let's have fairness and let us be humane. Let us be humane. Let's look at the other person. Let's look at life. Let's make life easy for ourselves. During Salah, at a point I experimented, a ram was sold for 350,000, and I went to same location a week after Salah. The same ram was being for 150,000. So what is the correlation there? I think we need to adjust our national psyche to be more humane than taking advantage of one another.
So the argument they will now give, others will give, is that, okay, let the government fix the price of goods and services. Goods. Let the government get into the markets and regulate the prices, as argued by one of the senior advocates of Nigeria in this country. So do you feel that there is need for governments to take charge of what goes on, when it comes to transactions between buyers and sellers, in terms of the amount or the price or the cost they are fixing for certain goods?
I subscribe to that. There should be price control system in Nigeria. And the FCCPC should be responsible for that. They should be stringent on that. You know, there should be price control of items. You know, well, you just leave a range above which people cannot go. Because if you leave it to people, you'll be so surprised. I don't know whether you have experienced this. You can go to filling stations which are just 100 or 200 meters apart, and you see the price difference of about 50 naira. And you'll be so shocked that why, I mean, just you're buying, and some of them will tell you they're buying from different sources, which is not true. You know, so I subscribe to the fact that there should be strong monitoring and evaluation of prices of items. There should be survey intelligence, there should be price intelligence board where people will know that this price should not go above this. And there should, when it goes above that, there should be a way of reporting to the FCCPC that there is a price change here. Unfortunately, most times we think FCCPC doesn't work, but it does. I have experienced it before. So this is a government institution that we should leverage on their capabilities to address this issue.
That's right. He was being from Abuja studio, MD, CEO, Exitom Consulting Limited, and an HR expert, as well as labor advisor, Adeyemi Ajayi. Thank you so much for your time on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you. Thank you.